So, welcome to the Light Reading Adaptive IP radio show. This episode is Intelligent Automation's Breakout Role, sponsored by Ciena. My name is James Crawshaw, and I'm a Principal Analyst with Omdia. I'm joined today by Brian Lavalle, Senior Director of Solutions Marketing at Ciena. Brian has got over 20 years of experience in networking and telecommunications. So, welcome, Brian. We're looking forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, James. Happy to be here. Always excited to talk about adaptive IP.
Okay, yes, this is part of Ciena's Adaptive IP radio show series. The other episodes have looked at the need to make IP networks more automated. They've looked at things like 5G network slicing, segment routing, and today Brian and I are going to be discussing how to make networks more intelligent to enable this holy grail of closed loop automation that the industry has been talking about for some time now. So, first off, Brian, let's set the stage. What exactly does Ciena mean by adaptive IP? It's not an industry standard term, so can you try and explain or define it for us?
Sure, absolutely. In a nutshell, adaptive IP, this is Ciena's solution to deliver standards-based IP connectivity, and specifically across the access, aggregation, and metro parts of a network. And we're looking to do so in a unique and different way. Adaptive IP, it's actually based on our adaptive network vision. And this is actually where the adaptive part comes from in adaptive IP. And adaptive IP, the solution itself, it's actually comprised of three parts. So the first part is programmable infrastructure. And this includes both the physical and the virtual network elements. Could be routers and also our service-aware operating system. So the programmable infrastructure is kind of like the foundation of adaptive IP. Second, where we start to get into the more exciting parts of the solution, we're looking at analytics and intelligence. So the programmable infrastructure I just mentioned, this is open, it's highly instrumented, and this means it produces a significant amount of data. And this is used by the analytics and intelligent part of adaptive IP to create actionable insights. And this allows the network to identify trends, learn from these trends, and then adjust accordingly, in the goal of always optimizing IP-based connectivity. Now, the third leg in the stool of adaptive IP, this is software control and automation. And this is where we take these actionable insights and we actually act upon them. And this could be for such tasks as optimizing traffic to relieve congestion. So if I had to summarize, what adaptive IP is, this is Ciena's solution that includes programmable infrastructure, analytics and intelligence, as well as software control and automation. And together at Ciena, we believe this creates a new and unique way of delivering standards-based IP connectivity from access to metro in a way that is automated, open, and lean.
Okay, I get it. Programmability, intelligence, automation. Yeah, it makes sense. I did actually prepare for our conversation today, Brian, you might not believe, but I read a white paper that you'd written called Introducing Ciena's Adaptive IP. And one of the things that I thought was interesting was you talked about hyperscale internet content providers who I think are some pretty big customers for Ciena. Last time I looked, maybe around 10% of the company's revenue coming from these internet content providers. What I was interested in is, what have you learned from those customers about the way that they deploy their IP networks that you can then take and apply with your telecom industry customers?
Yeah, absolutely. The internet content providers or hyperscalers, I'll call them ICPs for short, they're indeed an interesting group of companies. And they are very important, obviously, to Ciena as customers. Particularly related to data center interconnect or DCI types of applications. And this is an area where they connect their data centers overland and undersea. The ICPs themselves, they've been leveraging analytics, intelligence, and automation for many, many years, particularly related to the optimization on the return on their storage and compute assets. This is the part of their infrastructure that holds and delivers their content. In fact, some of the automation and analytics technologies were actually invented by the ICPs themselves. So no surprise that they're leveraging these technologies. And they've used analytics, intelligence, and automation. Sometimes organically created, sometimes externally adopted and adapted, and they optimize them over many years related to their storage and compute needs. Now, what we've seen over the last few years is they've increasingly started to leverage these very same technologies to optimize not only their network assets inside the data center, but also their network assets between the data centers. So we're essentially talking here about intra-data center and inter-data center connectivity. By leveraging intelligent software-based control and automation across now their storage, compute, and network assets, this allows them to create a cloud infrastructure that's extremely agile, it's highly optimized, and of course, the ever-elusive, cost-effective benefit that everybody's looking towards. Now, the traditional communication service providers, or the CSPs, they've also started to increasingly adopt and adapt similar automation and analytics technologies in their networks as well. And in many cases, it's the CSPs that are actually connecting the data centers for these very same ICPs. And this is actually where adaptive IP comes in. This allows the traditional CSP to intelligently automate their access to metro networks and provide standards-based connectivity, albeit in a better and different way, a way that's automated, open, and lean.
Interesting. Yeah, those are certainly important players in this industry, and one can learn a lot from the way they've used technology to improve, their connectivity, their storage, and the services that they deliver to customers. Very interesting. So you say that your adaptive IP architecture takes full advantage of software control and automation. We talked about that a bit earlier. But did you mean there that that's a required component of adaptive IP, so that I can't have adaptive IP if I'm not using Ciena's own software control and automation?
Yeah, so adaptive IP as a solution, it does take full advantage of software control and automation. And this is specifically because it addresses the challenges and opportunities experienced by all type of network operators. And what are these challenges and opportunities? Networks in general are getting bigger and increasingly complex, especially as IP connectivity and capabilities is increasingly required at the network edge. And this is driven by such applications as 5G and IoT, two popular terms that we discuss in the industry on a daily basis. Now, if operators are to address complexities, especially around the operational side of their business, intelligent data-driven software control and automation is definitely the way to go. Now, although the software control and automation part of adaptive IP, our solution, is purpose-built for standards-based IP connectivity, and of course, this includes multi-vendor networks, it's not absolutely mandatory. So at Ciena, we believe and recognize that openness is definitely the way of the future. I personally believe openness is an unstoppable juggernaut in our industry. This is from access to submarine and everything in between. And this is why when we say adaptive IP is automated, open, and lean, it's the open part that addresses the question that you're asking. In case anybody's wondering, the lean part refers to a modern optimized IP stack. So the openness that's built into adaptive IP, this means that operators, they're free to choose any vendor's software control and automation solution. And they're still able to leverage our family of purpose-built routers. And these are designed or purpose-built specifically for access to metro networks, but they're also designed specifically for certain application spaces, such as 5G xHaul transport networks. And by xHaul, I mean front haul, mid haul, back haul. So no, you do not have to use Ciena software control and automation part of adaptive IP. Obviously, we would like it if you did. But we recognize that operators have their vendors of choice. And if they so choose to use a third party, from our perspective, software control and automation solution, they can do so and still leverage a lot of the benefits that are inherent to adaptive IP.
Okay, so it's open in the sense of both your network elements infrastructure could be managed by another software control agent from another supplier, and equally your software control and automation stack could be used to manage other network vendors' network elements, right?
That's correct.
Okay, good. So route optimization and analysis, that functionality seems to be a pretty important capability of adaptive IP from what I read. Now, you say it's the only tool on the market that provides real-time visibility into how routing behavior affects service delivery, which is pretty interesting. Can you explain what it is that's so important about this to adaptive IP?
Yeah, absolutely. Many in the industry, vendors and operators alike, and even the media and the analysts, they talk about the many, many benefits of software control and automation, and they are indeed real. But unless you have real-time insights into what's actually going on in your network, when and where, especially where networks are becoming increasingly dynamic and unpredictable, it's very hard to intelligently implement software control and automation in an optimized manner. Now, on the adaptive IP side, we do leverage highly instrumented programmable infrastructure. And by highly instrumented, I mean that the infrastructure part of adaptive IP, or a network in general, is providing streaming telemetry-based insights into the ongoing and real-time state and health of the underlying network assets, both physical and virtual network elements. Now, this ability to have real-time insights into the network allows operators to proactively and reactively react or act upon network situations in a far more timelier manner. And what is the end result? It's an improved overall quality of experience for end users, both humans and machines. And this is ultimately what the end user cares about. They want their connectivity, they want the performance they paid for, and they want to make sure that that level of performance is delivered in an ongoing manner. This is increasingly important as networks become increasingly dynamic. A lot of people are talking about bandwidth on demand. You have machines being added to the network, millions to billions of new IP endpoints, and very often these machines are moving around. They have unpredictable traffic patterns. And if you want to optimize your network in real time, you have to have real-time insights into your network. Now, if we look at an example, real-time insights, they facilitate routing new services. You can turn up that new service on the network at the point and time you're turning it up in the best and optimized path. You can also reroute existing services around increasingly congested network areas. So end users experience a constant quality of experience, and they don't experience service degradation over time. Now, doing so in real time, this is absolutely critical to networks. As I mentioned earlier, they're becoming increasingly dynamic. This means that the state of the network changes over time. And increasingly, as we add more machines to the network, it's going to change in a far more rapid manner. And this makes legacy manual operational tasks definitely a thing of the past.
Interesting. So, in terms of this route optimization, if there's congestion in the network, you can identify that. If there's some sort of network element that looks like it's flapping or some sort of impending failure, you could identify that and route around that as well.
That's correct. And we can actually rewind what's happened in the network. So if you have a network situation that has occurred and you're not sure why, you can actually rewind, kind of like a PVR type technology or capability that you could rewind what happened in the network. And this, gives you additional insights into the network over time, not just real time, but also time in the past as well.
I see. Okay, for troubleshooting and such. Okay, interesting. So my last question, Brian, is it all sounds great, but do I need to rip and replace my existing IP network to get all of these benefits of adaptive IP that we've been talking about, or can you just take some of the elements like route optimization or orchestration and implement those on top of an existing network?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's an important question, and more often than not, it's the first question that we get. So when we created adaptive IP, it was a few years now, we fully understood that we'd have to interoperate with existing IP networks, and these are built from a variety of different network equipment vendors. So when we talk about adaptive IP being automated, open, and lean, that open part of our narrative is extremely important. Because we know, whatever routers, for example, we would put into the network and control, we'd have to interop with in a multi-vendor environment. And this is why adaptive IP is based on the openness concept from inception. And this allows network operators, and again, any type of network operators, they can enjoy the benefits of automation and a lean IP protocol stack even with existing multi-vendor networks. So, no, you do not have to rip and replace anything. As long as the IP network that you have is based upon open standards, this is easily a possibility for adaptive IP to be implemented. And when we talk about IP connectivity, it's actually based on open industry standards, and it has to be. If the internet is actually going to work. So it's very hard to differentiate on the IP protocol itself. So at Ciena, we believe, though, there's a better way to deliver standards-based IP connectivity. Again, when it's automated, open, and lean, and we call that solution adaptive IP. So yes, it does work with brownfield or existing network deployments, but it's also optimized as well for new or greenfield deployments as well.
Okay, so as you say, open, automated, and lean. That makes sense. Well, Brian, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you very much, James. I'm always happy to talk about adaptive IP. I'm pretty excited about this network solution, as are many of our customers, and I hope that people gain better insights into what it actually is and what are the benefits it can deliver.
Great. And if that's whet your appetite to hear more about Ciena's adaptive IP, you can check out the other episodes in the radio show. They're available on lightreading.com and on the adaptive IP section of Ciena's own website. Thanks very much, and goodbye.